The first thing I heard was not the birdsong or the wind through the pines, but the screech of tires and the rattle of engines crawling up the narrow gravel road toward my cabin. It was early afternoon, and I had come up to my family's place in the mountains for a quiet weekend, away from the noise and chaos of the city. I wanted peace, the kind of silence that reminded me of my father who had built this cabin by hand 40 years ago. Instead, I was met with a caravan of cars, SUVs, and even a small bus, all bumper to bumper, climbing my private road as if this was a public lodge. At the head of it all, standing bold and smug with a clipboard in her hand, was none other than Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, who had made my life miserable since the day she moved into the valley. She stood there like she owned the mountain, waving her arms dramatically, directing people in like she was a wedding planner. My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. She had booked my cabin, without my permission, for some massive gathering. I counted heads spilling out of cars, coolers being hauled, speakers dragged along the gravel. Over 100 people ready to invade my sanctuary. I shouted across the road, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" But my voice was drowned by the laughter and music already blasting from a portable speaker. Karen turned, her face painted with that smug smile I had seen too many times, and called back with theatrical ease, "Oh, don't worry. This will be over by tomorrow. You should thank me for bringing some life to your dusty old property." My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. This wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate theft. She had taken my home, my legacy, and sold it like it was her own. I walked straight to the gate at the entrance of my property, swung it shut with a heavy clang, and locked it with the steel padlock I kept for the hunting season. The line of cars screeched to a stop, people sticking their heads out of windows, confused. Karen's face froze, the smile cracking into something uglier. "Excuse me. You can't do that. I have a reservation." "A reservation?" I barked back, holding up my hands. "This isn't a hotel, Karen. This is my family's cabin, my private land. And you've trespassed. You lied, and you dragged these people into your scam." Murmurs spread through the crowd as they realized something wasn't right. A man in the second car leaned out and asked Karen, "Wait, you told us you own this place. We paid you for the weekend." My jaw dropped. She hadn't just invited them, she had sold tickets, collected money, and turned my home into her cash grab. The rage I felt in that moment was like fire in my chest. But I kept my voice steady, because I wanted every single one of them to hear the truth. She doesn't own this cabin. She never has. You were all conned. Karen stormed toward me, red-faced, her heavy steps crunching the gravel like thunder. She jabbed her finger in the air and yelled, "You listen here. This neighborhood falls under HOA authority. And as president, I decide how properties are used. You can't just slam the door on a community event." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, whispers growing louder. Someone muttered, "Community event. We each paid $200 for this." Another voice added, "That's $20. 000." She pocketed. The truth was unraveling before my eyes, and Karen knew it. Her confidence started to crack, but she doubled down, shouting louder, trying to drown out the realization spreading among her so-called guests. At that moment, I pulled my phone from my pocket and raised it high, showing the screen lit up with the county sheriff's number already dialed. "You have two choices, Karen," I said, my voice carrying over the quieting crowd. "You can leave right now and face the people you scammed. Or you can stay right here and explain it to law enforcement." The hush that fell over the road was heavy, broken only by the sound of the wind through the trees. Karen's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, I saw panic in her eyes. Just when I thought she might finally back down, a twist none of us expected happened. From the back of the line of cars, a woman stepped out, gray hair, pressed blouse, but with an air of authority that silenced even the rowdiest group. She introduced herself as Detective Alvarez, off-duty but local, and said she had booked a spot at this so-called mountain lodge after seeing the ad online. I suspected something was off, she said, pulling out her badge. And now it's confirmed. Fraud. Plain and simple. The crowd gasped. Karen stumbled back a step, her face drained of color, her arms flailing as she tried to defend herself. It was just a misunderstanding. A community fundraiser. But no one believed her now. Alvarez shook her head and told me quietly, "Keep that gate locked. She's not going anywhere until deputies arrive." I felt a rush of relief and vindication as Karen's empire of lies collapsed in front of 100 angry witnesses. The people she had conned turned on her in waves demanding refunds, shouting insults, some even filming her with their phones. The same woman who strutted around the neighborhood barking rules at everyone was now standing in the dust, cornered, exposed, and powerless. I didn't raise my voice again. I didn't have to. The truth had done the work for me. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to rally herself. "This is harassment. He can't prove anything." But her words stumbled over the jeers and boos from the very crowd she had dragged here. Someone shouted, "Give us our money back. Scammer." Another bellowed, "You told us this was a luxury retreat." Phones were everywhere now, recording every second, capturing her flustered face and my calm stance with the gate locked tight behind me. I knew in that moment this would go viral. Detective Alvarez took a slow step toward her, badge still visible. "Karen, do you understand what you've done? You advertised property that wasn't yours, collected tens of thousands in cash and digital payments, and tried to hold a mass gathering on land you had no rights to. That's fraud. That's theft. That's endangerment." Karen flailed, pointing toward me with desperate energy. "He's lying. This is a community facility. Everyone knows it. I was just organizing what he refused to provide. He's selfish, hoarding land that could benefit everyone." I raised my voice, but I kept it even. This cabin isn't a clubhouse. It's not part of your HOA jurisdiction. My father built it with his bare hands, and it's deeded to me. You knew that. Karen, you tried to sell it off because you think rules don't apply to you. The crowd's muttering swelled into angry shouts. Even a few kids, dragged along by their parents for this supposed retreat, looked at Karen like she was a monster. When the sheriff's deputies finally arrived, sirens cutting through the pines, Karen's last defense crumbled. She tried to approach them with her usual haughty strut, but Alvarez intercepted, explaining everything with crisp authority. Within minutes, deputies were taking statements, collecting screenshots of ads and digital payments from the victims. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, and I didn't hesitate. Yes. Absolutely yes. She has tormented this community long enough. The deputies placed Karen in handcuffs right there on the gravel road. She shrieked, red-faced and sweating, twisting against the restraints. But no one rushed to her side. Not one of the 100 guests defended her. Instead, phones filmed her meltdown, capturing her shouting that she was the victim and that this was a setup. Her words only made the crowd laugh bitterly. The woman who had lorded power over us for years was now being driven away in the back of a sheriff's cruiser, her empire collapsing like a rotten house of cards. But the story didn't end there. A week later, the county prosecutor charged her with wire fraud, theft by deception, and criminal trespass. The HOA board tried to distance themselves, issuing a weak statement that Karen had acted independently. But too many people knew the truth. She had been using her HOA title for years to bully, threaten, and manipulate. Now her name was poison. Her reputation destroyed not by rumors, but by her own greed and arrogance. The twist came when Alvarez, the off-duty detective who had exposed her scam that day, returned to see me. She told me that Karen's fraud ads had been traced across several states. Not just here. She had been running similar scams under different HOA banners, targeting vacation cabins, barns, even private lakes. My cabin wasn't the first, just the one where she finally got caught. I sat stunned, realizing how close I had come to losing more than just one weekend. If I hadn't locked that gate, she could have emptied my cabin, trashed the land, and disappeared with all that cash. Instead, she was facing years in prison. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood transformed. Without Karen's iron grip, people started talking, connecting, and realizing how much fear had kept them silent. We held a community gathering at the local fire hall, ironically. The first real community event in years, and for the first time, people felt free. They voted to dissolve the HOA leadership entirely, stripping away the sham rules Karen had written to keep herself in power. I didn't expect to feel emotional, but as I stood there, listening to my neighbors cheer, I realized we had taken back not just our homes, but our dignity. The cabin became a symbol after that. People drove by the gate and pointed to where Karen had been arrested, telling the story to newcomers like folklore. A few neighbors painted signs that said things like, "No trespassing," "No scams," and nailed them to trees along the road. Someone even left a wood carving at my gate with the words, "Our land, our voice." I kept it there as a reminder that standing up to bullies, no matter how loud they are, can change everything. Months later, when the trial came, I sat in the front row. Karen shuffled in wearing a faded county jumpsuit, her once perfect hair frizzed and limp, her eyes hollow. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as victims from across the state took the stand, describing how she conned them. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 5 years behind bars, with restitution owed to every single person she scammed. The look on her face when the gavel came down, shock, disbelief, as if she still couldn't grasp that the world didn't revolve around her, burned into my memory. I walked out of that courtroom into bright sunlight, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The cabin was safe. The community was free. And Karen's reign of arrogance was over. As I drove up the gravel road that evening, I unlocked the gate and looked out over the mountains. My father's cabin stood strong, untouched, glowing in the last light of day. I whispered to myself, "We won." And that's what I want you to think about. Was I right to lock that gate? To let her empire crumble in front of everyone? Or should I have handled it differently? Sometimes justice isn't loud or violent, it's a quiet lock clicking shut. A line drawn where no bully can cross. What do you think?